The Hermetists understand the art and methods of rising above the ordinary plane of cause and effect to a certain degree, and by mentally rising to a higher plane, they become causers instead of effects. The masses of people are carried along, obedient to the environment, the wills and desires of others, stronger than themselves, heredity, suggestion, and other outward causes moving them about like pawns on the chessboard of life. But the masters, rising to the plane above, dominate their moods, characters, qualities, and powers, as well as the environment surrounding them, and become movers instead of pawns. Hey, welcome back to Conscious Casey. If this is the first time you're here, welcome. I've been going through the Hermetic principles. These are the laws of the universe. These are nothing to do really with religion or anything like that. These are principles that we know exist in the world, and it's how the universe functions. And when we gain knowledge of how these principles work, we can begin to work with them in our lives and design our reality. So I'm on the principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect, and every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. This principle embodies the fact that there is a cause for every effect, an effect from every cause. It explains that everything happens according to law, that nothing ever merely happens, that there is no such thing as chance, that while there are various planes of cause and effect, the higher dominating the lower planes, still nothing ever entirely escapes the law. The Hermetists understand the art and methods of rising above the ordinary plane of cause and effect to a certain degree, and by mentally rising to a higher plane, they become causers instead of effects. The masses of people are carried along, obedient to the environment, the wills and desires of others, stronger than themselves, heredity, suggestion, and other outward causes moving them about like pawns on the chessboard of life. But the masters, rising to the plane above, dominate their moods, characters, qualities, and powers, as well as the environment surrounding them, and become movers instead of pawns. They help to play the game of life instead of being played and moved about by other wills and environment. They use the principle instead of being its tools. The masters obey the causation of the higher planes, but they help to rule on their own plane. In this statement, there is condensed a wealth of Hermetic knowledge. Let him read who can. So I'm going to relate this back to the original, the first principle that I went over, and that was the all is mental. The everything happens from the mind. The mind is a cause, and the world around us is the effect. So when we work on our mind and we use our faculties of mind, like imagination and reasoning, and we use our will to create in the mind, we can then cause an effect in our world. So I think it's important to look at your world around you, look at your life, look at your results, because the results in your relationships, in your inner peace or turmoil, in your bank account, in your well-being with your body, and emotions, those are the effects of the mind, of the cause. So in order to change the effects that you're getting, the results that you're getting in life, we need to look at the principle of cause and effect. And we need to create different causes in our mind. So one thing that we can do is look at our limiting beliefs in mind, thinking I can't do that because, or that is not for me, or I'm not capable of that. Or maybe you have a limitation of guilt or shame from the past, or maybe there's trauma around that where you have fear of the unknown, fear of a previous effect that happened from a cause outside of yourself. And once we create awareness around those things and we learn the truth of things, that just because it happened before doesn't mean it needs to happen again. And also, it's important to raise awareness around the effect in your life, the results in your life, to identify the patterns happening. This happens, then this happens, and then I always get this result. And this happens, and this happens, and I always get the result. And then really taking ownership of the cause, because it's really easy to blame outside circumstances. Like it talks about the masses of people are carried along obedient to the environment. So maybe you're in poverty. Maybe you live in a bad neighborhood. Maybe you work in a toxic environment and you're using that as the excuse for your effects. I'm like this because of that, or I'm in this situation because of that. Because you have the power to change that. We use our will. What do the masters do? The masters, rising up to the plane above, dominate their moods. Okay, they work on their moods. Every morning I wake up, I'm working on my mood right away. I'm working on my mind. Where am I going today? What do I want to get done today? How am I going to feel? What is the trajectory of my life today? It takes a lot of mindfulness, and it's putting our energy in the right place. Because if I get up, or if you get up and just run through life on a daily basis, Groundhog's Day, and you just get out and you do the things, and you get in traffic, and your boss does this, and you get the bills, and you're just tossed around by all these things on a daily basis, it's really hard to get anywhere. It's really hard to make a change when you are subject to the changes. Instead of being the cause, you are just being the effect. You're affected by everything around you. When I'm deeply anchored in myself, in my heart, and I'm okay with myself, not much around me can toss me around. That comment from that person about how I look, about how I act, about their judgment of me, it has very little bearing on me. That might be different from somebody I love. I would be able to have a conversation with them about that. Maybe I'm being brash or hurting them in some way, or then that would be something I could. That's an effect I'm creating on them, but that might be all on them, from their lens looking back at me. But we do live in a world with other people, so we have to take some people's opinions and the way we're affecting them into account. Dominate their moods, characters, qualities, and powers, as well as the environment surrounding them. So, what's the environment that I live in? I'm very selective on who is in my circle, who is allowed at my house, who I hang out with, who I talk with on the phone. I that it's okay to take care of yourself. It's okay to be 100% okay with yourself in mind, body, and soul all the time. Because when I'm like that and somebody comes, I'm vibrating up here and somebody comes at me with a low vibration because they're in guilt, shame, addiction, they're suffering, they're grieving. I can help them, because I'm up here. But if I was down here and they come over, we're both sinking. You see? That's why we put our oxygen mask on before we put the next person's oxygen mask on. that we have to be responsible for ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves, and then we can take care of others. The wills and desires of others stronger than themselves, heredity, suggestion, and other outward causes, moving them about like pawns on a chessboard of life. Heredity, it's a thing, right? We don't have a choice in that. But when we get older, we do have the responsibility of becoming good people, of refining our character, and being a principled person. Does it have to be perfect? No, we're just working on it. It's a journey of life from the first breath to the last. It's all work in progress. When it talks about um, different planes of existence, it's incomprehensible how much is going on a daily basis, everywhere, all the time. You know, when you're looking out through your eyeballs at whatever you're looking at, and you think that that is important, whatever you're taking in, you know how many other uh, things are going on in the world at the same time? A trillion, billion, jillion different other things happening. And you think that that one moment and that one thing in front of you is like of the utmost monumental importance? It's not really. It's not. Everything is interdependent. Everything is intertwined, and there's things happening that we can't even comprehend with our tiny little minds that only sees, the a pinhead of what's actually happening in this experience of life right now. We can cause effects in our lives because if I make a string of bad decisions, that could affect my life. I could get incarcerated. I could lose my house. I could get beat up. you know, that's why we have to be rooted and grounded in these dominating our moods, our character, our qualities, and powers, as well as the environment around us. Then we become movers instead of pawns. And that's why it's important to work on these things on a daily basis, to get our mind right, to get forward thinking, to be thinking about, how do I want my life to be? What isn't working in my life? What is no longer serving me? What am I doing on a daily basis that keeps me on this hamster wheel of misery that I don't want to be on? And it's about making a different decision, even if it's a tiny little step in a different direction. One of the smallest and easiest things that you can do is write down what's going on in your life. Just taking an inventory of what is actually happening in my life. Where am I spending my time? Where am I spending my energy? Who am I hanging out with? What does a ideal life look like for me? Because when we ask ourselves these questions and we start writing them down, our minds are goal achieving machines. Okay? Just think about, great empires and castles and kingdoms that have been created in this world just by one person, you know? And we think that we can't accomplish these tiny little achievements and whatnot. We can do anything that we put our minds to, literally. I know that's cliche, but it's so true. And the only reason why you're not achieving your goals, why we're not building a new kingdom or an empire or whatever, building a great family, it doesn't have to be huge. Building a little business that makes you enough money to give you some financial and time freedom is because we're so distracted on everything. And that distraction keeps our energy just scattered. And when our energy and attention is scattered, we can't really catch up to our thoughts. We can't really be single minded about a goal that we're trying to get to. So I guess it's weighing like what's important in your life. What's important in your life? Is it worth taking time out of your day to do the inventory, to write down the things that you're doing on a daily basis, to create a wonderful visualization of what you could have in life, and then work back from that and start creating the causes that will have the effect that you're looking for in life? I think it is. I think it is. And I know you're capable of it. All right. That's the principle of cause and effect, and how we can use that in our life on a daily basis to get to where we want to be in life. All right, I'm going to wrap it up there. These are core principles of our universe that we live in. We should at least know the core principles of our universe that we live in, so that we can use them to our advantage. All right, I love you. I wish you well on your expansion of consciousness. I'll see you in the next video.